Hello, this is my 2007 Hyundai Santa Fe, and in this series of videos I'm going to be explaining my journey of replacing the stock OEM radio with an inexpensive Chinese Android head unit. I'm going to be covering the specific trials and challenges that I had in this type of vehicle that would be applicable for any head unit replacement in a Hyundai vehicle model years 2007 through 2012. And I'm also going to be covering the challenges I faced setting up and getting the head unit operational, which will be applicable for other vehicles besides Hyundai's where you're considering installing an Android head unit in that vehicle. So let's get started. Before you even decide to plunk down your credit card to buy an Android head unit, in a Hyundai Santa Fe 2007 through 2012, the first thing you're going to have to figure out is which radio you have. Now, in this vehicle, I've already replaced my radio with the appropriate Android head unit, but I'm going to show you the simplest way to do it without having to take apart half your car before you get started. In vehicles without the Infinity sound system, you'll have a bin, and on top of this in the front, you can't see it in this video, but you'll see it here when you look down. There are two screws that hold this bin in place. So you take out your handy dandy Phillips head screwdriver, and you take out the two Phillips head screws. Don't lose them. So that's one. And there's another one. It's on this front shelf here. And once you take out those two screws, you can simply lift out by lifting up the front and then sliding everything forward, the entire assembly. So it lifts up and out. And that gives you access to see inside the radio cavity. And with a flashlight or a phone that has a light on the front of it, we'll just shine it down into the cavity, and you'll be able to see what kind of connectors are on the back of your existing factory OEM radio. You might not see the model number, but you'll at least see what the connectors look like. So let's take a look in the cavity, and then I'll also show you what my radio looks like that came out of the vehicle. Now, since for the purposes of this video, I've already taken my radio out, here's what my radio looks like in the front. And as I reach over, as I would in the cavity, to see in the back, you'll notice I have two black connectors. All right, looking at our cavity, you can see the two connectors that have the blue tabs are the harness connections to the main car wiring. So we have identified which connectors belong to our particular radio by looking down in the harness. These are the three connector types found on 2007 through 2012 model year Santa Fe radios. If you have connector type 3 with the two ends, use particular caution. These Hyundai vehicles use a non-standard General Motors Chevrolet style connector. Some Android head unit kits include this connector wired for GM vehicles, and you will have to repin this style connector if yours is not correct. Check out my wiring harness video for more details on this issue. You can find that on the link in the upper corner of this video or in the description. Once you have determined the proper wiring harness for your vehicle, it's time to place an order for your unit. Some sellers will want to know the connector type in advance so they can ship you the correct kit. Other sellers will include multiple connector harnesses like mine did. Let's take a look at what comes in a typical Android head unit kit. Okay, this is my Android head unit kit. Came in a cardboard box, well packaged, nondescript, no markings on it anywhere except for the standard Amazon sticker with the product number. If you buy yours from Amazon or AliExpress, this is probably how your kit will come. So let's open it up and see what we've got. So it's well packaged, I will give them that. And the first thing that we have is we have our actual head unit pre-mounted inside the bonnet or shroud specific to our vehicle. So if I take it out of the protective packaging and I don't drop it, you can see that's the front part of our Android head unit. The shroud is specific to the Hyundai. Okay, this is a Hyundai shroud. If you have a different vehicle, you'll have a different shroud. And then the actual unit radio itself is the interior one that's mounted in the shroud. So you get the same radio, but you'll get different shrouds depending upon your manufacturer. So we'll put that over here, and I'll show you what else we get. Again, specific to Hyundai, these are the assemblies for the switches that go below the radio. So there's a space. There's a space right here, and depending upon whether you have 3 switches or 4 switches in your existing vehicle, determines which one of these you'll actually use. So we'll put these over here for the moment. I'm going to run out of room. You get a user's manual. This is somewhat useless because most of it talks about parts of the software that you have to pay extra for. There's a few diagrams. It's very small print. Not much is useful. If you can find these a little bit bigger online, would be better for you. And certainly things like wiring diagrams and function diagrams, you're going to have to find online or figure out for yourself. So that's the owner's manual. In this particular kit, they do have a car-specific, full-color, double-sided instruction manual for installing this particular head unit in a Hyundai vehicle. It's not bad, but it certainly, in just one piece of paper, glosses over the details by a mile. I will provide links in the description to videos online that show you actually how to disassemble the car, remove the old head unit, and put the new head unit in. But this one-page thing is a pretty nice attempt, better than having nothing. Some kits won't come with any car-specific instructions, and you're left to fend for yourself. They also throw in a few goodies related to that. They throw you a very low-quality screwdriver. You should have a better quality screwdriver than this. They'll throw you a little plastic trim removal tool. Again, you should buy a really nice trim removal kit for $10 or $15 from Amazon. You can get a set of 5 or 6 parts, and much easier to remove your trim because you don't want to break the plastic parts in your car. Those are hard and expensive to replace. Other things you'll find in the box are, we have a set of cables here. There's some USB cables, there's some audio cables in here. There is a very important cable we'll talk about when we're hooking things up, which is for the backup camera and other things. So I have a cable package of those. This is the backup camera. So there's a backup camera in this pouch, along with a very long video cable to get the backup camera signal from the rear of the vehicle to the front. Comes with its own separate user's manual. And here's an external microphone. I didn't need one in my car because you're right up there next to the head unit with the mic in front. But I guess in certain cases where you want better fidelity, you can connect up the microphone to the head unit. And a few other things. Here's the GPS. Here's the GPS unit. So you get a GPS unit. And then last but not least, in this particular kit, I got a bunch of the harnesses that I showed you a picture of earlier. So in this particular kit, we get a whole bunch of harnesses for a Hyundai vehicle. So yeah, you get all these parts and just a basic instruction manual for kind of how it all goes together. So that's the kit. All right, you just unpacked your kit on your workbench or your kitchen table. What do you do first? Well, my advice is, first of all, you inspect the harnesses that you received. If you are fortunate enough to receive multiple harnesses, identify the harness that is going to be used in your vehicle. So for example, this would be for my vehicle. And then take it out of its package and go online and make sure that the pinout on the harness matches the pinout for your vehicle. As I mentioned earlier in my harness video, sometimes they ship you a harness that looks like it will fit, but there are pins that are in the wrong spot. Even for the standard, this is an ISO standard harness, even for these standard harnesses, it's a good idea to just double check the wire colors and the wiring to the actual head unit, just to make sure that they didn't make an inadvertent wiring mistake when they were wiring it up. If you have the benefit, now where do you find the actual wiring diagram? That's actually where this little manual comes in handy. So inside the manual, depending upon which head unit you have, you might be able to find these diagrams online, but in this particular manual, they do have a description of what the colors are and the power positions are for the various functions on the car for connector number 1, which is the main power cable for the unit. So different documentation will show different detail, and there are some guides online. If you're unsure what the wiring colors are on the radio end of this deal, please make sure you become familiar with the correct colors for your car. All right. Now, if you have the benefit of multiple harnesses and you're not going to use one of the other harnesses, I suggest that you put one of the harnesses that you're not going to use aside, and we're going to work on the head unit out of the car, make sure it's booted up, make sure that it works, make sure that the software installed on it is correct, upgrade the things that need to be upgraded. Best to do that before you put this thing anywhere near or disassemble any part of your vehicle, no matter what vehicle you have. Because if you get half of your vehicle torn apart and then this thing doesn't work, or the wiring harness is wrong, or you plugged it in with the wiring harness and it was the wrong wiring, and now things are messed up either on the head unit or in your car, you're going to have a bad day. The first thing you're going to want to do is purchase or obtain a 12-volt DC power supply. Now, I have one from an old router that outputs 12 volts DC. You can buy these relatively cheap online. You can borrow one. There's a lot of different options. But you definitely want a low current. You just need an 1 amp. That should be more than enough. Doesn't have to be super big. But you definitely want to be able to power this unit on your kitchen table or on a bench before you put it in the car. So we've got our DC power supply here. And then this is something that you're going to want to custom yourself, I guess. I'll show you my setup in a second, and then you can take it and be custom from here. I stole my son's snap circuit board. This gives me a couple of features for testing out my head unit. Let's see here. Get these things untangled. All right. Put that wire aside. So I will go over in a minute what wires you need to connect to which connections. But basically, the easiest way to test the system out is you're going to need 12 volts in, and I have a splitter that I've used so I don't have to cut the end off, so I get bare wires. And I bought a bunch of clip leads. I also bought a big bag of clip leads from Amazon at the same time I bought the head unit, because I knew I would be needing these things. So essentially, in most of these head units, although you want to check yours for sure, the head unit, the black wire in the wiring assembly is ground. So we attach the black wire in the harness all the way over to the ground pin on my power supply. The yellow wire in the harness goes through yellow and attaches to the plus 12 volts all the time. That's the all the time on signal for the head unit. And then the red wire, this one here from the harness, that goes to a switch. Now, I have a fancy switch. You could have just two clip leads that you clip together and unclip. This simulates turning the ignition on in the car and off. So this will allow you to control what happens to the head unit when it's on for full operation, and what happens to the unit when it's in standby mode. So I have a switch here. The other two things I have here is I have two small speakers, just regular speakers, unpowered, just plain speakers. And I connected my speakers to the front left and front right outputs, so that when I'm testing the unit out, I can hear audio, at least from the front left and front right speakers, to confirm that it's playing properly. And we'll get this all wired up, make sure nothing's contacting each other. And then I'm going to actually grab a heavy object, like this old battery, because I'm going to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is we need to plug our harness into the radio itself. And this is my spare harness, so I took some pins out of it. You can cut the wires if you're not using it. Many different ways. This is a sacrificial harness that I'll never need to use in my particular vehicle. And you can, if you don't have a sacrificial harness, you can carefully use the one you're going to use for the car, or you can purchase a spare. They're pretty cheap, and that'll get you for testing purposes as well. So the first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to flip this upside down. And we're going to plug in a few things in these head units. In this particular head unit, we're going to need, this is the power connector, and that's what this end goes into. So we'll plug this into here. And we need a few other things for basic operation. We're going to need an antenna plugged into the antenna port, at least a little bit of an antenna if we want to test FM operation. If we want to test whether or not the GPS works, we're going to have to plug the GPS antenna into here. This is the GPS port right here. And then for the unit itself, a couple of things. If you need or want to load software via a USB wired port, you'll have to plug in at least one of the USB wired connectors. And very important, the backup in this particular series of units, the backup camera video port also contains the antenna for the Wi-Fi and contains the antenna for the Bluetooth. So if you are not going to use the backup camera, you still need to plug in the backup camera dongle piece. Otherwise, if you omit it entirely, you're going to get really horrible Wi-Fi and really horrible Bluetooth performance, and you'll think the unit is malfunctioning when it was just an installation error. So I'm going to get all those cables that we need out of the box. So this is what I'm talking about. It looks like it's just for the backup camera, but these two little wires at the end do provide the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi functionality for this unit. So we're going to need it. They happen to include a little bit of an FM radio antenna whip. That'll help us with receiving radio stations. All right, so we'll go ahead and plug that in since we're standing right here, and the unit's upside down. Then, as I mentioned before, you have to plug this in this particular model. Now, the nice thing about this particular kit is all of the white connectors have their own unique pin count. So you can't really screw this up unless you plug a small connector into a big connector slot. So each one has its unique set of pins. So this only fits correctly in one socket. It happens to fit in this socket right here. So we'll plug that in just like that. If I wanted to plug in the USB, I could plug in the USB. We'll go ahead and take the GPS, because we will eventually be doing GPS stuff. And I'll undo the wires for that. And we'll throw the GPS antenna off here on the right. And go ahead and wire it up on the left. So these GPS antennas, they push on and screw on. Okay, so that's the GPS antenna. And then last but not least, remember my power is still completely unplugged, disconnected. I didn't turn anything on yet. We're going to go ahead and plug in the power cable. But before I do that, I just want to turn this around and position it how I need it. That's going to be like that. And then I'll go ahead and plug the power cable in, and everything's keyed. So this power cable only goes in one way. And I'm going to hold up my unit because I don't have a lot of length. Great. And then last but not least, I'm going to get something to prop this up so that you can see it when it's operating. Okay, so I have the yellow wire connected to my power source here. I've got my ground connected, I've got my switch in the off position going to the red wire, and I have my speakers connected to these little speakers that are over here. So I'm ready to plug in my 12 volt DC power source. So I'll do that right now. Now when you do that, you won't see anything happen on the head unit because without the accessory connected, it won't actually power up or do anything. So we're going to go ahead and flip the off switch to on. And if I did everything correctly, in 1 or 2 seconds, we should see the boot up message starting. And now you can see the boot up message is starting. And we see the words Android. This is going to be Android 9, faking as Android 13. And then it'll drop right back into the Android head unit starting screen. Now, currently, this is an Android product, but we have no internet connection to Wi-Fi, and we have no phone connection right now at all. So the only thing that the system can really do is bring you to the main screen. This is a good stopping point for part 1. In part 2, which is linked in the description, I will continue with configuring the Android head unit for basic operation. See you there!